news of the day.
Mr. Zimmerman, have you made a decision as to whether or not you want to testify in this case?
With values that never die.
There are certainly a lot of controversies or scandals brewing right now when it comes to the Obama administration.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Dealing with the federal government is not always high-tech, and it's not always user-friendly.
The stories that matter.
This is a massive escalation in the tension here in Egypt.
The issues that count.
I don't know why the media tries to make this into a sensation. We have never hidden the fact that we supply Syria with weapons.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
He's got the red, white, blue flying high on a farm. Semper Fi tattoo.
Welcome to American Heartland. This is Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. We have an action-packed show for you. Please stay tuned until the very end. We have two formidable guests on today. One is a brilliant economist by the name of Marius Forte, who lived next to the Iron Curtain and has lots to tell us about the Soviet Empire. And we also have the great Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, who will engage with me in a showdown, a debate on Ukraine at the end of this show. Stay tuned for all of that. Well, this week, it has been absolutely stunning. Stunning to watch what Russia has done, taking over Crimea, annexing it, essentially declaring that this is actually the will of the Crimean people based on the referendum that was held on Sunday. I think what's most remarkable of all is, although the Western world sees this as an act of aggression, sees this as a pure grab for territory, you have President Vladimir Putin, who in his speech presents himself as a hero, as somebody who is righting his historical wrongs. He is making things right. He is also presenting himself as an individual who is coming to the aid of Russians in Ukraine, in an unstable state, and possibly in a state that is going down the road of fascism. So this speech is absolutely stunning because he presents himself as completely in the right, and America as a power that is hypocritical and irresponsible and in violation of international law. The hubris of this man has no bounds. I want you to just listen to a little bit of a clip, a snippet of his speech delivered in Russian. Roll it, Brittany.
17 марта в Крыму состоялся референдум. Он прошел в полном соответствии с демократическими процедурами и международно-правовыми нормами. В голосовании приняло участие более 82% избирателей. Более 96% высказалось за воссоединение с Россией. Цифры предельно убедительны.
And the speech goes on to such warm applause by the audience listening. This speech is delivered to a joint session of the Russian parliament. And you can hear in that speech his utter self-confidence, his utter hubris, and you can also hear something else. And that's why I encourage every single one of you out there to read the speech in English. You will find transcripts of it everywhere on the internet. Read it and read every word, because what is in that speech is chilling, and it portends what will happen in the future. I have been saying from the very beginning of this crisis, in fact, all the way back when we were discussing Syria, that dark clouds were going to start to gather on the horizon during the Obama administration, and that in particular, strong men around the world were only going to get more and more bold. We are now seeing unfolding right before our eyes something I only read about in history books. Borders in Europe are now being changed. Borders in Europe are being changed. In my lifetime, I have not seen that. In fact, I was thinking about it driving in to do this show. You know, in my lifetime, essentially, I've never even actually seen with my own eyes a very weak president. I was still just a very young girl when Jimmy Carter was in the White House, did not have any political consciousness back then. So the only presidents I've seen in my lifetime have been presidents who they may have had certain failings, no doubt. But I don't think we could say the word weak characterized them wholeheartedly in almost everything that they did in national affairs. But with President Obama, I'm seeing two things that I only previously read about. I'm really seeing a weak man in the Oval Office and what that means abroad. And now seeing something else. I'm a historian. I read for years and years and years. In fact, I spent 9 years of my youth in my 20s, basically in a library reading to earn a doctorate in history. And I read about all these changes of territory. Did I ever in my wildest dreams think that I would witness it with my very own eyes? Never. Not only am I witnessing this massive transfer of one group of people who are in one country and now are going to join another country, but also the speech tells us that Vladimir Putin is likely, highly likely not to stop. Even though in the speech he's reassuring the Ukrainians that he has no further designs on their territory, that in fact he sees them as friendly and he wants harmony. What he also says is that it is important for him to protect Russians abroad, and that the people of Russia, he cites all of these polls in Russia, that the Russian people support him in this endeavor. What's most amazing about the speech is that he gives an entire history lesson of Crimea, how it used to be part of the Soviet Empire, how it was then part of Ukraine, but within the Soviet Empire. And then when the Soviet Empire broke up, it actually remained within Ukraine, but it rightfully belonged to Russia the whole time. That at one point Russia was too weak to right that historical wrong, but now the opportunity presented itself, and he, the champion of the Russian people, has made things right for the history books. That's what he's saying. Doesn't that sound familiar? That's exactly what Adolf Hitler said in the 1930s. He was upending the international order because he was righting the wrongs of the Treaty of Versailles. The Germans had been wronged, historical wrongs, and it was his destiny to set those wrongs right. That's what Hitler said. And he began piece by piece taking one part of Europe after another. Today, we are seeing history repeating itself all over again. And what is most disturbing of all is that we have a president, a commander-in-chief, who doesn't know the basics about being a commander-in-chief. Listen to the interview that he gave. Roll it, Brittany.
We are not going to be getting into a military excursion in Ukraine. What we are going to do is mobilize all of our diplomatic resources to make sure that we've got a strong international coalition that sends a clear message, which is the Ukraine should decide their own destiny. Russia right now is violating international law and the sovereignty of another country. Might doesn't make right, and we are going to continue to ratchet up the pressure on Russia as it continues down its current course. There's a better path, but I think even the Ukrainians would acknowledge that for us to engage Russia militarily would not be appropriate and wouldn't be good for Ukraine either.
Not engaging militarily, not using the military option when you are the world's sole superpower, not using all that we have built up, all of the military capital and everything that goes with it in order to compel Putin to withdraw. This is what he has said over and over again, and the result is one man is laying down his gun and another man is picking it up. That's what we're saying. And this is not going to stop. What happened this week? Well, the United States had huffed and puffed and we're going to blow your house down. And when the Russians did what they said they were going to do, you know what we did? We slapped these silly little sanctions on them. And the president said, we're sending a message. Well, guess what? They sent a message right back. Their stock market rose 3.7% after the announcement of these paltry sanctions on what amounts to about 11 people, 11 insignificant people. They didn't even sanction anybody of consequence, anybody within the higher echelons of the defense hierarchy there, or of the intelligence hierarchy. This was not even a slap on the wrist, and it was rightfully ridiculed by even those who are going to be the recipients of these silly sanctions. And if you notice, if you look at these speeches, when our president delivers them, or even when the vice president delivers them, have you noticed how often they're looking down? They're not even looking up. They don't even have their shoulders broad, erect, straightforward, looking at the camera, with their body language signaling that they're serious. Vice President Biden went to Poland this week. And again, to threaten, to huff and puff, if you do more, we're going to get very serious, X, Y, Z. And if you look at the speech and you look at how he delivered, oftentimes he's looking down and around and right and left. You're not scaring anybody. Listen to Biden.
Russia has offered a variety of arguments to justify what is nothing more than a land grab, including what was said today. But the world has seen through Russia's action and has rejected the logic, the flawed logic behind those actions. It's a simple fact that Russia's political and economic isolation will only increase if it continues down its current path, and it will in fact see additional sanctions by the United States and the EU.
Oh, they're going to stop now. You really sucked them. You really sucked it to them, bumbling Biden. You know, you went all the way to Poland to deliver such a strong, forceful, convincing message. They heard you. Oh, yeah, they heard you. That's why the stock market went up 3.7%. They are not afraid of bumbling Biden, and they are not afraid of the nincompoop in the White House who takes the military option off the table when he is the commander-in-chief of the world's sole superpower. Those are the two idiots that Putin is confronting, and that is why he isn't going to stop. And I ask you this, if it were you in his shoes, what would you say? What would you do? I would say, listen, this is a candy store. The doors right now are wide open. All we have to do is walk right in and grab as many candies as we possibly can. And let's do it now, while that store is open, because possibly in 2016 there might be different kinds of leaders and we may have more of a challenge. So let's go, 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 go. And it's not just the Russians who are going to threaten our interests and the world's borders everywhere. It's other nations. We have a story in WorldTribune.com that I ask everybody to take a good look at. It's actually going viral. It's called Beijing's Strategy to Buy Taiwan, Coerced Unification Without Firing a Shot. You have the Chinese that are increasingly getting bolder and bolder regarding territories that they've had their eyes on for a while. And when they see how weak and feckless and pathetic our president is regarding Russia, they also are going to say, let's raid the candy store as quickly as we can. You are listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com, upholding values that are never going to die.
75 Johnson with electric choke. A young boy, 2 hands on the wheel. I can't replace the way it made me feel, and I would turn sharp.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Welcome back to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. I am the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com. And every week on this show, we uphold values that are never going to die. Well, today we have a very fascinating guest. His name is Marius Forte. He is an economist who lived in Vienna, not too far from the Iron Curtain. He is here to tell us a great deal about what it was like to live so close to nations that were besieged, essentially, by the Soviet power that was trampling upon their freedoms. He is really concerned about Putin's entry into Crimea. He thinks that this is the beginning of more aggression. We haven't heard the last of the Russian boots trampling upon other nations, apparently. And also, he is the author of a new book. It's called The Answer, Proof of God in Heaven. To talk to us about all this, it is the economist Marius Forte. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So tell us a little bit about your experiences growing up in Vienna, so close to the Iron Curtain.
Well, I was born and raised in Vienna. I was allowed to visit an American school because my parents were impregnated with gratitude what America did for Europe, for Austria, Germany, and could never forget. We would not have lived in Europe in freedom if it wasn't for America. That's why I personally can't stand if somebody knocks the American flag. It is the beacon. It is the only thing that we have in this life that really guarantees freedom. Europe would have been lost. The world would have been lost without America. If somebody is anti-American flag, I always ask them, which is the next best country? Is it Portugal? Is it Greece? Is it Denmark? If you don't like America, which country do you like? Anyway, I was born and raised in Vienna. We were surrounded by the Iron Curtain, which was 1,200 miles long, a mile wide. It had self-shooting devices, minefields. When I was only 8 years old, my father took me on a Sunday just to see the border, and we saw a Hungarian who tried to run for freedom, and he got murdered by the communists, as it was almost, a weekly event on that Iron Curtain. So I know what communism is about. I know what socialism is about. I can also recognize communists and socialists when I see them, which a lot of Americans can't.
Yes, that's very true. And those who have lived nearby or have lived within communist states see a lot of the same signs coming to America of a slow motion socialism taking place right here. I find your perceptions really fascinating about what it was like to be right beside the Iron Curtain. You, though, are alarming us or trying to alarm us, trying to awaken the American public. You do not think that Vladimir Putin is going to stop in Crimea. Why is that?
Well, you know what? It's a matter of nature. The softer object will always lose against the harder object, always. We sanction against tanks, tanks will win. We do not have American leadership, which means we have no Western leadership. We have a community organizer who plays president by reading off a teleprompter. We had an ex-wife of an American president who doesn't begin to understand the history of Russia, the 1,000-year history of suffering, and she goes to Moscow and thinks with a silly reset button, all of that is wiped clean. These people should not have been in these kind of positions of leadership, certainly not now. When you have the U.S. president draw lands in sand that he doesn't have any way or willingness to keep, that is very dangerous because our enemies are watching and looking and learning. And that's exactly what happened here. Putin figured out Obama. He knows that Europe has no will. Germany is demilitarized. Of course, France is run by socialists. In Europe, we have lost the will of leadership. The only leadership that we could have is from America. There is none. So he will march forward. They are already right now amassing Russian troops on the border of the Ukraine. They will take eastern Ukraine. They will take western Ukraine. Our president already made the big mistake by saying he will not interfere militarily. So what is him to stop? We have the Baltic states that have joined NATO and are part of the EU. But even when they joined NATO and part of the EU, it would take willpower to actually defend and send troops. And we don't have that kind of willpower right now in the West. We will pay a dear price because it's Neville Chamberlain all over again. It's 1936 all over again.
You know, I completely agree with you. I've been saying the very same thing on the air. I think this man will not stop. What do you say to those who would argue? Let me play devil's advocate with you. What do you say to those who say, but the Russian people will not tolerate Russians coming home in body bags for all this foreign adventurism?
They have no choice. I spoke to my parents and my grandparents who went obviously through the Hitler years in Germany. My father was in the German army when he was 17 and he had to go, otherwise they would have shot and killed him. They have no choice. It's not a matter if they tolerate it or not. Once you're a dictator and the dictator is brutal enough, there's nothing you can do. You've lost the power. And this man, if you look at the history, war is almost more natural than peace. And it always takes a bully who wants something. Hitler wanted Poland. Poland is a poor country, but he wanted it. The same thing with Saddam Hussein. He wanted Kuwait. He had 28 palaces, all the power, all the money that he wanted. He wanted Kuwait. And now Putin wants what was once the Russian Empire. And unless he's stopped, he will take it, and we will have a dear price to pay for it. I said on a different show, imagine you're really tired and you come home, and the last thing you want to do is, get in any kind of situation. You go upstairs to your wife, you lie down, and you hear there are two burglars that are armed who just broke into your kitchen, and they're coming upstairs. You don't want to get out of bed. You're tired. You had a really bad day, but you know what? You have to. If you want to or not, wishing for peace is not enough to actually create peace. That's exactly what Ronald Reagan understood when he said peace through strength, or speak softly and carry a big stick.
Yes, you're quite right. And the analogy that you present is a very good one, because right now this nation is war-weary. We are exactly that. We are in bed and we are tired. We are sick of war. And Putin is using that very much to his advantage. He is an opportunist, and he is seizing his opportunities really brilliantly. Now, let me ask you this. What do you think that an American president should have done to have prevented this annexing of Crimea?
You'll be amazed how simple it would have been. We have the power, besides the nuclear option. North America and Europe has about 900 million people. Russia has about 180. Our gross domestic product is about 32 trillion, 32.5 trillion. Russia's is about 2.5. Our military, our conventional military, is no match. His military is no match to the West's military. If I was the president, I would have sent in the Sixth Fleet, added another 3 or 4 aircraft carriers. We have 12. Russia has one that doesn't really work. And then I would have called him. I would have put boots, American boots, down on the ground and set up a tripwire in the Ukraine. And then I would have called him, because now you basically have a fait accompli. If we don't do it now, believe me, we'll have to do it later. But it's going to be that much more difficult. Because when Putin is on a march, he will not stop. It's like a cancer. The cancer doesn't stop on Thursday, 4:15, and says, enough, that's all the body that I need. It keeps on spreading. That's what history teaches us each and every time.
It's true, and it teaches us that if you don't stop the tyrant when he's small, you're going to die anyways. You're just going to die in greater numbers when he's strong. And that's exactly the risk that we are taking now by allowing him to enlarge his power. At what point do you think that the American public and American leaders are going to wake up and send boots on the ground?
Well, first of all, it takes a totally different leader. And let me come back to 1936. In 1936, when Hitler marched into the Rhineland, the British and the French had a force that was way superior to that of Hitler. And Hitler in 1936 had no army. And again, we have a force that is way superior to that of what Putin has today. But we don't have the willpower. Neville Chamberlain thought just wishing for peace is enough. If you wish for peace more than the other guy, you're actually creating war. So it would take leadership, which right now we don't have.
We don't have. And sadly, that leadership is also failing in Congress. In order for the president, though, to be able to put boots on the ground, he would need the approval of Congress. And he got so spooked by the failed Syrian adventure, when it was clear that Congress was not going to back any military intervention, that by the time he's dealing with Crimea, he was a completely paralyzed man. That's what we saw, complete paralysis.
If I may give you a totally different angle. I've debated communists and socialists my whole life. The arch enemy of a communist was America. The arch enemy of communism is freedom. If you have that communist virus in your brain, you will hate America. And we had communists in Europe, we had them in Eastern Europe, and we also had them in America. I can recognize a communist. Believe me, Obama is a communist, a Marxist. He said so himself. Just go to YouTube. He put absolute communists into the White House. He truly believes America should be taken down not one notch, but several. So what is going on right now is very much to his liking. He wants to take America down a few notches. And that's what is happening.
Yeah, so essentially you're saying that he and Putin are complicit in the degradation of America and also the knocking of America off her perch as the world's sole superpower to being now one of many impotent nations, essentially.
Well, don't you remember what he said in Whispered to Medvedev when he said after the election, I'll have more flexibility? He's doing everything to take America down. He just gave up the Internet. He gave up control of the Internet to countries like Iran and China. If that doesn't ring bells to you, I mean, everything this man has done over the past 5 years is to weaken America.
Yeah, it's the slow motion destruction of the greatest republic that the world has ever known. Now, tell me something, sir. You've written a book. The answer is Proof of God in Heaven. You say in the bio and the promotional materials that I read that, in part, this book deals with the struggle for religious liberty in Ukraine. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, when a tyrant turns against his own people, it doesn't matter if it was Hitler or Stalin or Mao Zedong, they always also turn against religion, because religion gives you a morality. But the morality that these dictators want to have, they have to have exclusivity. So they cannot have any other kind of thought process next to them. That's why each and every time when they go against religion, when somebody goes against religion, against the freedom of religion that is guaranteed to us, our red lights really should go on, as they should go. They should be going on right now. This is exactly what is happening. In Russia, you had no freedom of religion. In Germany, Nazi Germany, you had no freedom of religion. Mao Zedong, of course, the same thing. In the name of communism and socialism, all over the world, from National Socialism in Germany to the Pol Pot, to North Vietnam, to China, Arabs, Saddam Hussein's party was called Arab National Socialist Party. Over 100 million people got murdered. And all of these dictators had one more thing in common. They were all atheists. So if you're somehow a socialist and a communist, and maybe an atheist too, you haven't joined a good club.
Brilliant, brilliant points, brilliant analysis. You're obviously a man of great learning, extremely astute, great wisdom, and life experiences that add so much depth to everything that you say. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show. Where can our audience buy your book?
The answer, Proof of God in Heaven, truly gives you proof of God via the naturalistic laws. You can find it on Amazon.com or on BarnesandNoble.com. We also have a website that's quite interesting with some great videos, theanswer-book.com, theanswer-book.com.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, sir. We will be sure to call upon you again for your thoughts on foreign policy. You are truly an outstanding guest. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you heard it right from the horse's mouth. This was somebody who lived next to the Iron Curtain, and what is he telling us? He smells the tyrant's boots all over again. Mr. Putin will not stop. It is up to us to tell him enough is enough. You're listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com. And I'm here to uphold values that are never going to die.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Welcome to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. I'm the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com. I think that we are slowly getting a consensus in this country, regardless of what you think should or shouldn't be done about Vladimir Putin's march on territory that doesn't belong to him. I think the consensus is you have people who think the president is not doing a good job in foreign affairs. And this emerging consensus is no more clearly visible than in the late night comedy shows. You recall that when Jimmy Fallon took over recently on The Tonight Show, he announced that he would stay away from politics. Well, that didn't last very long. His ratings haven't been too good. And recently, he did a skit, a spoof of the president's dialogue with Vladimir Putin on Ukraine, and it is priceless. Roll it.
Hello? Hello, Vlad, it's Barack. I've been trying to call you all day. Where you been?
Sorry. I've been playing iPhone game Candy Crush. It's so addictive. I just take the candy and I crush it.
Oh, I hear you. It's been quite a stressful week, I'll tell you that much.
Been pretty stressful over here, too.
Obama's swigging beer and Vladimir is swigging vodka at that point.
Look, we got to talk about the situation in Ukraine. I mean, you invaded Crimea.
No. You got it backwards, my friend. Haven't you heard the 80s comedian Yakov Smirnoff? Everything in Russia is opposite, so technically, Crimea invade us.
Look, don't you see what you're doing, though? You're forcing people to accept something that the majority of them don't even want.
Yes, in Russian word for this, Obamacare.
Ouch. Now that hurt.
Yeah, does Obamacare cover burns?
Ha, very funny. And no.
Look, bro, I'm just trying to do my thing, and then I'm watching news. Next thing I know, you're sending John McCain over to Ukraine.
Yeah, that's right. McCain in the Ukraine.
McCain in Ukraine.
McCain in the Ukraine.
McCain's insane, got no brain.
Oh, we have good times. Anyway, look. I know you really want Crimea, okay? But I got some advice for you, okay? Just let it go.
Let go?
Let it go. Let it go. Can't hold it back anymore.
Let go. Let go. Turn away and slam door.
I don't care what they're going to say.
Let storm rage on. The Cold War never bothered me anyway.
So look, Vlad, just to recap our call, no progress was made here, right?
None at all.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
So this is what late night comedy is now presenting to the American people. We have our president who essentially engages in a sing-off with Vladimir Putin, and Putin running roughshod right over him. I thought, though, the most priceless line of all in that was that ding about Obamacare. The people didn't want it in America, and he rammed it down our throats anyways. Well, that is really an indicator of where the public sentiment is. The president seems like a big joke in foreign affairs. This week, I am sure you are as sick as I am about the coverage about that plane, regarding the coverage of that plane that disappeared in Malaysia, Malaysian Airlines 370. The coverage has been dreadful. And it's not just from the extremes that we might have heard on CNN, even from Fox News. It's been full of speculation rather than hard reporting.
And this is a Fox News alert. My next guest, Lieutenant General Tom McInerney, was among the very first to say that the Malaysian airliner's jetliner was, in fact, could have been hijacked and it could have landed in Pakistan. Today, he's doubling down on that claim, and he's here now to join us and explain what he means by that. General, good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
He doesn't know, and nobody knows. And his interview, as have been so many of the interviews that Megyn Kelly has done and Greta Van Susteren, it's full of experts who are mouthing off about their expertise, but without knowing anything specific about that flight. And the long and short of it is this. We know that the flight disappeared. We know that there are 26 countries looking for it, and pretty much That's all we know right now. So stop all of this endless speculation. It is only discrediting the media, all the media, both on the left and on the right. You are listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com, upholding values that will never, ever die.
Your love, our freedom, to the things I can count on to keep me going strong. Yeah, I hold on. I hold
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
gotta be strong and it's gotta be fast and it's gotta be fresh from the fight. I need a hero. I'm holding on for a hero till the morning light. He's gotta be strong.
Welcome back to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. I'm your host, upholding values that never ever die, and I have to uphold these values even in my own household, which is currently fraught with dissension. And this is the moment you have been waiting for. I have the brilliant Jeff Kuhner on the line.
Hello?
Hello, are you there?
Hello? I could have made it to Crimea by now.
Listen, I bribed you with 2 burgers before I left the house to do this show. So are you ready for the rumble?
I think you're afraid. I think that's what I told Brittany. I think you're scared. I think you're nervous. I think you're panicking, and you guys don't know what to do right now. So
well,
now
listen.
it's just run out the clock. Now it's just run out the clock, and then have me say I can't debate you because I got to go upstairs and take care of the kids.
No. In fact, Jeff, I have always been a big fan of all your work. You know that. Often when I listen to you, if I'm beside you, I'm pumping my fists. I'm saying that's the best radio interview I ever heard. You're the most brilliant man in America. And, I've always been proud of you. In fact, when I think Jeff Kuhner, I think Boston's bulldozer, and usually you sound kind of like this to me. Roll it, Brittany. You see, you sound like a formidable bulldozer taking on all your opponents. But lately, when you and I debate Ukraine, or when I hear you talk about Ukraine on the air, you sound kind of more like this. Mushy, mushy, mushy. Perhaps like the little pussy, pussy, pussy cat that you keep calling Obama. Well, listen, Jeff, you and I are going to have a debate. This is a big-time, serious debate. There are rules to the debate. Unlike in your show, we have rules. We respect our guests. So it's going to be...
I resent that.
We're not going to just lower the volume of your voice when we disagree. What we're going to do is this. It's going to be, I get 1 minute for my opening comments. You get 1 minute for your opening comments. Then we have 8 minutes to just have a freewheeling debate. And then I'm going to get 1 minute for my closing remarks, and you get 1 minute for your closing remarks.
Well, who's checking the clock? How do I know, you don't get 1:30, and at 45 seconds, you guys cut me off?
Well, this is American Heartland. We believe in fair play here. So you just have to trust us. Now, let's get the show rolling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
All right, so how to deal with Ukraine. The most important thing to do is to absolutely, fully, and completely use everything in our power. We are the world's sole superpower. And the first thing we need to do is to threaten Putin with the military option. We must never, ever put the military option off the table. The only way to handle the Russians is simple. MAD, mutually assured destruction. That is how we won the Cold War. We threatened the military option. We put the military option right against their heads. And that is how we defeated them. What we have done with Obama is nothing but retreat, retreat, retreat. And so I say, first and foremost, in order to get Putin to do our bidding, we have to use everything at our power. Jeff, your turn.
Look, I mean, I'll be very honest with you, Dr. Grace. You sound like a warmonger. You sound a bit like a lunatic. You're talking about mutually assured destruction. This is the problem I have with war hawks and the war party in the Republican and Democratic establishment. Have you learned nothing from Iraq? Have you learned nothing from Vietnam? Have you learned nothing from Afghanistan? We have a military that is stretched thin all over the world. We have a $17 trillion debt. We have borders we're not able to enforce. We're being invaded by illegal immigrants on a daily basis. And now you want to bring us into another disastrous potential war? The issue here is this, and this is what you and the war party do not understand. People like John McCain, people like Lindsey Graham, and reckless buffoons like Jean-Francois Kerry and the buffoon Biden.
Okay, those are your opening comments. First of all, you're wrong. Now we have 8 minutes where we can go back and forth. But I want to just address what you've said.
Hold on.
This was 1 minute each for opening comments, and now we're going.
Each? I checked my watch. I was at 45 seconds.
Mano to mano.
You gave
Listen,
yourself 90 seconds. What is this?
All right. Listen, this is what I am suggesting. No. My comment about mutually assured destruction really is that is essentially the mind frame that you need in order to go up against the Russians. I didn't say we have to destroy them, but we are a nuclear power, as are they. And my point was that we have to act like one. And what I would do is I would have armed Ukrainians to the teeth, and I would have threatened Putin that if he made one move forward, we're going to back Ukraine 100%. We're going to rearm them. We're going to give them back the nuclear weapons that we took from them. We're going to bring them into NATO if necessary. We're going to put a missile defense shield in the Czech Republic and Poland. We're going to place nuclear weapons in Poland. I would say we have to threaten him with a full array of military options, not economic options, because ultimately the Russians are not a materialist people. The only thing they understand is force.
Well, look, I mean, the question is this, and I think this is the problem with your argument and all of those that are calling for a get tough with Putin or get tough with Russia approach. You want a second Cold War. And the question is this: what does it matter to the United States of America which flag flies over Crimea? It has been historically Russian. It's ethnically Russian. Most people in Crimea want to join Mother Russia. Every major Russian leader, not just Putin, Gorbachev, every single major Russian opposition figure backs the annexation of Crimea. How is this any of our business?
Do you hear the little pussycat sound that we're playing? You sound like Putin. That is what Putin said in his speech. You're buying his argument. I'll tell you what it means to the American people. First of all, Ukraine disarmed based on our promises. Our failure to stand up with them diminishes our credibility all around the world, and that's a threat to our national interests, as well as being profoundly immoral, because their nation was just violated based on our failure to uphold our promises. That's number one. Number two, here you have the redrawing of borders that were established after World War II, and it's not going to stop. And if you don't fight the tyrant when he's weak, you're going to have to fight him only later when he gets stronger. So I think your path is the path of lunacy, not mine. Mine is the path of reality, because just like in the United States, when you constantly argue in defense of the Second Amendment, I'm using that same argument internationally. It is force and the threat of force that preserves peace.
look, there's no question that Putin is a KGB killer. And no one has been more a stauncher critic of Vladimir Putin than Jeff Kuhner. But the fact of the matter is this. You can say you want to arm the Ukrainians all you want. The Ukrainians are not going to fight for their homeland. They ceded Crimea without a shot. They're not even going to fight for eastern Ukraine. So the question is this. Who is going to do the fighting and the dying? When you say arm Poland, when you say arm the Baltic states are now part of NATO. This was the fatal mistake of the 1990s. I warned against it repeatedly, as you know. We pushed NATO right onto Russia's doorstep and the front porch. And now we have a security guarantee with Estonia, with Latvia, with Lithuania, with Poland. And you have that lunatic, Joe Biden, go to Lithuania and tell the Baltic states that if Putin moves in to protect the Russian minority in Latvia and Estonia, that, quote, we will militarily go to their defense. So the question I have for you, and the question I have for the war hawks and everybody else now looking for a second Cold War is this. Do you want us to go to war with Russia, where you will have not hundreds of thousands but millions dead? And maybe
first of all, Jeff, you're buying Putin's propaganda. The Russian military is a joke. The Russian Air Force is a joke. And my point is this. When you stand up to them, you call the bully out. He's just a tin pot bully. And by failing to stand up to him, he's only going to get stronger and stronger. The quicker you stand up to him, the quicker the issue is resolved, and the quicker the bear is slapped back into his cage. That's the point. The point is that it actually won't take that much if you have nerves of steel. But right now, what we're doing is we are ceding our superpower status without even a fight, more like a whimper.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, look, we've ceded our superpower status under both Bush and Obama by bankrupting this country, by running up a national debt.
No. Bush was willing to put up the missile defense shield to the Czech Republic and Poland. No. Bush, I got to give him credit, and I agree with him. I disagree with you. You bring those nations into NATO, you put up that missile defense shield, and you keep right on going. Because let me tell you something. If the Russians had won the Cold War, that's exactly what they would have done.
Well, look, I'm getting back to this fundamental point where you have it under Bush and Obama. We have bankrupted this country. I warned against it. Our foreign debt is now owned by China. Russia is forming an economic alliance with China. They can wage economic warfare and basically destroy our country economically, number one. Number two, Putin is not the second coming of Hitler. Every time you talks, the war party, when you want to get us involved in a war, Milosevic was Hitler. Saddam Hussein was Hitler. Gaddafi was Hitler. The last time you wanted to get us into war was over Syria, over Bashar Assad, which would have led us clearly to World War III. So Bashar Assad was Hitler. Now Putin is Hitler. Everybody's a Hitler. The fact of the matter is this. Putin does not want to march into Eastern Europe. He doesn't want to conquer all of Europe, as Hitler wanted to do and as Hitler did. Putin is a great Russian nationalist. He sees himself as the protector of ethnic Russians outside of Russia, in particular in the Baltics, Ukraine, and Crimea.
Are you saying that you're willing to let him take over the Baltics and most of Ukraine?
Give me two more sentences. This is what any Russian leader would do. This is none of our business. Let the Ukrainians deal with Russia. Let the Poles deal with Russia. Let the Baltic states deal with Russia. The problem with
it's too late to say it's not our business. If they disarmed based on our promises, it became our business. And now we are the cowards. We are the weaklings. And what we have done is profoundly immoral. You can't just abrogate international agreements. Then what does it mean for every other ally that we have in the world? And you know what? It doesn't even matter what... This is the clear point. We inherited a specific situation in time. You can't ignore history. We don't just start from scratch when you deal with a country. The reason that Ukraine can't fight is because we told them to give up their nuclear weapons.
Whoa. Look, number one, the Ukrainians, and I said it at the time, were stupid to have given up their nuclear weapons. Their fault, not ours. They made a stupid, colossal mistake, just as they allowed Crimea to be taken from them without firing a shot. So they have behaved like gutless cowards for the last 20 years. Now, that treaty, to be specific, says that we will respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. So does Russia. So does the United Kingdom. But we are not militarily obligated as we are under Article 5 in the
Yes, we're not militarily obligated, but we have a different kind of obligation.
Well, my question to you is this. Look, I keep coming back to this point where you can't, look, this is the point that you cannot refute. Is Ukraine worth World War III? Is Crimea worth World War III? Is Estonia worth World War III? Where is the vital national American interest to risk a potential world war with Europe? And
in order to preserve peace, you must be willing to risk war at all times. That is a cornerstone of a successful hawkish foreign policy, and I do remain a hawk. Okay, we're each going to have 1 minute now for closing comments. I will begin with my minute. I think, Jeff, that where you go wrong is on a number of points. I think, first of all, that we are the world's sole superpower, and we have failed to act as such during the Obama years. He undid what George Bush had done, and I think had we even just remained in place what George Bush had so carefully crafted, Putin might have thought twice before venturing into Crimea. I think that we need to return to a much more virulent foreign policy, which includes threatening to rearm or provide nuclear weapons to any nation that is threatened by Russia. That will hold them at bay because they don't want a nuclear war. And that's the only thing they understand is the possible risk of annihilation. As we saw, that's the only way we win against them. Also, I would say that we should arm as many of the new members of NATO, like Poland, for example. We should give them nuclear weapons because that's the only way to stop a monster like Putin. Your turn.
Well, sweetheart, I hope that, there's no hard feelings. I hope you don't leave me. Don't leave me with 2 kids. Ukraine and Russia is not worth the breakup of our marriage, sweetheart. That's number 1. So I hope you come home tonight. Number 2, we are not the world's sole superpower. That is a myth. China is on the rise. Russia is a military colossus. We are now weighed down by massive deficits, massive debt. We are overrun by third world immigration. It is time for us to come home. We have a war in Afghanistan. We just had 4,000 Americans die in Iraq. We've got 300 bases around the world. And now you want to talk about a confrontation with Russia? This is the 100-year anniversary of the First World War that led millions to death because of people like you that rattled your saber, got us involved in a far-off corner in Europe, giving security guarantees that we had no business giving. In the end, was Sarajevo and Bosnia worth millions of dead? No. You are going to repeat the same tragic mistake here, and I'm telling all of you, don't write checks you can't cash.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff, for participating in our debate. We look forward to doing this again in the future. Thank you so much.
Leave me.
That won't happen. Don't worry, that won't happen. Well, I do want to close by saying that Jeff has made a couple of key mistakes in his analysis. One of the most important is this. We need to show the will to preserve peace through strength. And when we do that, we preserve peace without firing a shot. You are listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com, upholding values that will never, ever die.
In an extraordinary place where the stars and stripes and the eagle fly.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.